Okay, just checking that we are live on YouTube. It'll come through in a moment.
Okay.
Here we go. Hi, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to welcome today Lynne McTaggart. It's a great honor to have you here, Lynne. She is author of 7 best-selling books internationally, including The Field, The Bond, The Intention Experiment, The Power of Eight. She's also co-founder of the international magazine What Doctors Don't Tell You, and she's architect of the Intention Experiments, which is a global laboratory to test the power of intention to heal the world. I'm a great fan of your work. I love your blogs, and congratulations, Lynne, on becoming a grandmother recently. Love that photo of you. So
Thank you very much. It's very exciting. Living all over again as a parent, just one step removed.
yeah, well, it's a beautiful picture of you with your granddaughter.
Thank you.
So it's sort of a tremendous time astrologically. We've got a lot of solar activity happening. And I believe that when there's a lot of solar activity, there's greater heart and brain activation. Would that be right, Lynne?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have to understand that the sun is basically a big old ball of gases, and it's crossed with a lot of magnetic fields. And so that unstable situation is a recipe for periodic explosions. And that's what's going on now. Lots of things like solar flares, which get hurled toward Earth and hit our geomagnetic shield, which is a donut shaped energy field around the Earth. And when that happens, all living things are affected, particularly the 2 major engines of the human body, the heart and the brain. And as you say, it really affects us. We get energetically, essentially destabilized. But for my purposes, this is a good thing because it also increases the power of our intentions.
Yeah, yeah. So you are really a world authority on the power of intention. You're consistently listed as one of the world's most amazingly spiritual, influential people. So perhaps could you tell us a little more, bring us up to date on your latest experiments, your latest intention experiments, what you're up to now?
Sure. I mean, at the moment, we've been doing informal intention experiments. I mean, I tend to do when I'm doing any kind of intention experiment, whether it is trying to make seeds grow faster or purifying water or lowering violence in war-torn areas or even healing people, I tend to gather together my readers and followers from around the world, and we set up some well-controlled experiment using one or more scientists working at prestigious universities like Penn State or University of Arizona or Princeton, University of California, and more. What we've been doing most recently has been just doing daily intentions for Ukraine and doing the kinds of things where I just invite people on my Facebook page to be part of this at 9 a.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. UK time, and everything else in between, all doing it at the same time. Before that, we have been doing a lot of experiments, which are very cool experiments, actually working with a physicist, Dr. Konstantin Korotkov, who works at St. Petersburg State University in Russia, and by the way, is appalled by everything going on at the moment. But what we did, for instance, in the US presidential inauguration, is if you can recall, there was a lot of violence and a storming on the Capitol on January 6th of last year. And so what we did was we brought together people who were both Democrats and Republicans, people who were police and also African Americans, people of all kinds of persuasions. We even had a former jihadist And we had them all together, plus my internet audience around the globe, to do intentions together to lower violence. Meanwhile, we also had them focus when they were doing the intention, not only on making sure that the inauguration was peaceful, but also focusing on equipment we had in St. Petersburg, Russia. And we found a big change just in the time we were doing intention. Big change, almost like we have a psychic internet and we are affecting things all those miles away. And that's about the fourth or fifth experiment we've done like that. So we continue to stretch the limits and examine the limits of consciousness and our ability to affect things from afar. We've done many. I've done 40 intention experiments now, and 36 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects.
Wow. Wow. That's just amazing. Yeah, to have you. What I love about your work is you are very evidence-based. You want the science behind what the miracles that are happening. And
Oh, absolutely, Bracha. I mean, I have a background as an investigative reporter, and that evidence-based fact-finding part of me has never left me, even though I've moved so much into science and spirituality. So I do examine strange things and miracles, but I do so from a strictly scientific perspective as much as I can. And that's true even with our small groups, the Power of Eight groups. When I started putting small groups of people into groups, which was really just came about by accident when we were playing around with what to do with the workshop back in 2008. I just turned to my husband and said, I don't know, maybe I'll put people in small groups of 8 or so and have them send healing intention to a member of the group with a health challenge. My husband's also a journalist, very good headline writer. And he said, I love it, the Power of Eight. And that's really how it started. We didn't expect people to have healings. We expected it to be a kind of like a little light meditation, a feel-good exercise. But when we did it, at the first time we did it in a workshop in Chicago in 2008, the next day when people came back for their second day, having done it the day before, with putting people into groups, sending intention to a member of the group with a health challenge, the people with the health challenge came back to report on what had happened. And they were saying things like this. I have arthritis and I'm walking normally today. I'm normally limping with my left knee. I have terrible depression. It feels lifted now. I have digestive problems, terrible IBS, and my gut is normal today. And amazingly, someone said in that first workshop, I have cataracts and they're 80% better. So we were shocked by that and shocked for many years. I kept doing it, experimenting with it, working in workshops, putting people in groups, recording what was happening, and just stunned. And my husband bullied me into writing the book, The Power of Eight, because at the time, I think it was about 2016, 17, I kept saying, I need more evidence. I need to work on this more. I'm not sure about this. I'm scared of this. And it was frightening. I mean, now I've seen thousands of people get healed in Power of Eight groups and the power that it has with a consistently meeting group. And so I've become a believer, but I needed to examine it and look at the evidence from every kind of angle in order to do that book.
I love that. Yeah, and you seem to be one of the the only female that is very public in this field. Yes, you seem to be surrounded by a lot of male scientists and
I know in some of the conferences, I
great.
remember when we did a conference with all of the scientists working in this area. We have pictures of it. There's me, the only woman there. And now with the people who are talking about this work, my dear friends, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza, they're all dear friends. And I'm the girl. So
Yep.
yeah, it is fun. It is fun. I mean, there are other girls in this area, Dr. Sue Morter, and of course, wonderful Anita Morjani, also dear friends of mine. But I suppose in the real realm of science and spirit, yeah. There's just me.
Yeah, you're outstanding. How do you feel, Lynne, that intention actually works? How does something that seems to sort of come from something inside our heads or our minds actually affect us physically?
That's a great question. And how does it make me feel and how does it do it? Two very good questions. How it works is it makes perfect sense if you abandon the very outdated paradigm that we all live by, the science we live by, that is more than 300 years old, that describes the world of very well behaved separate objects operating according to fixed laws in time and space. So we've accepted that as our reality, and that is the science that has created the technical mastery we have over our world to a great extent. The problem is it's a science that's out of date. You know, science is a never ending story, and it is just a story because every time there is a new discovery, it rewrites the chapters that have come before. And certainly when I did my book, The Field, I was stunned to find all of these scientists who were in the midst of discoveries that were remaking our world, that were describing a new science in the making. Now, they were working way back in the 70s and the 1980s. So they're really, my book, The Field, was really a history in a way because it was describing things at the time that it had occurred 20 and 30 years ago. But, you know, science proceeds one funeral at a time, as they say. And these whole ideas, these extraordinary ideas that describe the fact that we are all part of a giant energy field. We ourselves, in our subatomic level, are vibrating packets of energy. Our cells are communicating via frequencies, not chemistry. Our thoughts are not locked inside our head. Studies have demonstrated that all living things emit a tiny current of light, and it looks like thoughts are one more part of that current of light. And so we have to think of our our brains as more of an antenna receiver. So something that sends out thoughts into the world and something that picks up thoughts and other information and perceives by picking up much as a television set does. So from radio waves. So we are essentially this vibrating packet of energy, trading energy with other vibrating packets of energy. And once you start recognizing all of those things, which were a foundation of my book, The Field, I wrote about all of that, then you understand, well, that's not so weird that we're leaky buckets and our thoughts are flowing out there all the time and affecting other people and things. And also in The Field, I covered a number of scientists whose experiments were demonstrating that thoughts aren't just things that seep outside of us, but things that affect other things. And that really provoked my curiosity. Okay, how far can we take this? And it felt like unfinished business. So that prompted me to write my next book called The Intention Experiment, which was not only a collection of all the science of intention that already existed, but it was an invitation. It was a book without an ending. I figured at the time, well, if I'm going to figure out how this all works, maybe I need to test it. So how could I do that? Well, I know a lot of scientists in this area, and I also have a lot of readers. The Field was in 30 languages by that time. So I thought, well, if I just put them together, I'm going to have the biggest laboratory in the world. And that's what we did, not assuming. I really was very uncertain it was going to work. I wanted to test it, though, and I wanted to test what happens when lots of people are thinking the same thought at the same time. I was really curious about that. Will that magnify the effect? So how I felt about this, it probably completely changed my life. It blew my mind. It frightened me. It made me realize that I need to keep pursuing this, and I need to go after this in a new direction. But it did frighten me because I wasn't at all sure it was going to work. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to test this, but I could really fall flat on my face with this. Um, and I was very lucky to find the editor I had at Simon and Schuster, who probably believed it more than I did at the time.
Wow, really? So you were very brave then. It took a lot of courage to.
Or foolhardy, Bracha, or foolhardy.
Okay.
And the scientists who were very brave too. Dr. Gary Schwartz, the psychologist, a noted psychologist at the University of Arizona, was a great guy because he stepped up to the plate and said, "Yeah, I'll do a first experiment with you." And
Wow.
that one was just trying to affect the light emissions of a leaf. And he had special equipment that could measure these light emissions going out of living things, including from human beings, photon by photon. So he was perfect for the first one, but neither of us knew whether it was going to work. But we were wedded to reporting on what happened no matter what. And it's what we've tried to do ever since. If it doesn't work, if one didn't work, I've always been very honest in reporting, hey, this one just didn't work. Let's see why. Let's tweak it. Oftentimes it's been a technical issue. Either the website, we found so many people wanted to do this when we first started out that we didn't have enough server power to get everyone on the website at the same time. So we learned some of the technical issues. And another time we did a water experiment trying to purify water, and the lab assistant inadvertently put them next to the jars we were sending intention to, next to an electromagnetic field, and that nullified our results. So we've
Wow.
had a few technical hitches like that, but as I say, 36 out of the 40 have shown measurable positive responses.
It's tremendous, isn't it? I mean, wow. So, I mean, it's no wonder that you're an award-winning investigative journalist. Yeah, you were determined to keep investigating and to keep going deeper and finding more. So, from your experience, Lynne, and your research, what do you feel that we are actually capable of?
Oh, that's a great question. So we are capable of so much more extended human potential. You know, we're born with these qualities, and we know this as children, but it's drummed out of us by, by authority figures, by teachers and parents, et cetera, who say, no, that imaginary friend of yours is not real. And so we don't come to believe in this magic, essentially. And we have a culture that is very so-called rational. I find it very irrational because they don't accept the science that is there, the evidence that is there. But what I've
Yes.
seen is we have an extraordinary ability, and I've seen this with thousands of students. We have an extraordinary ability to heal ourselves and heal each other. We have an extraordinary ability to use intention, the power of intention, the power of our minds, not only to heal our bodies, but also our finances, our careers, our relationships. I've had thousands of that too, to create new relationships. My favorite one on that one is a woman called Joy, I guess a woman about in her 60s, who wanted to bring love into her life, have a new relationship. So her group did an intention for her, a Power of Eight group, who were working with me for a whole year. I do some courses where it's a year-long thing where I'm putting people into groups and we're just working together for a whole year. And out of nowhere, she gets a call from a boyfriend she had 35 years ago, out of nowhere after this intention. And they start talking. And this is during lockdown. He's in Australia, she's in the UK. They start talking, they start connecting, they start falling in love. And he moves over to Australia as soon as they open up lockdown. So they're together. And I just love that. But we've had amazing things like that over and over and over again. So I'm I know we have that capacity. I know we have the ability to forecast events. I know we have the ability to time travel. And that's something I'm working on at the moment, Bracha. I am showing people how to go back and heal their past through intention. And it has some extraordinary effects. I mean, I had a, a workshop that I ran a few years ago, and it was this extraordinary. There was a woman who had, I usually always tell people to go back to the event, and it's all about techniques that help people recover their power. Because when somebody's been diminished in some way, whether it is a teacher telling them they're stupid at math, or something much, much worse like abuse of some sort, going back and reclaiming your power is the secret, really, to overcoming it in our experience. And so I had this woman who had vitiligo. She had lost pigment all over her body after having a virus in her teens. So I had her go back to that whole time and work with recovering her power, going back to the seed moment, and just dealing with everything that had happened to lead to that infection. And I swear to you, she said, raises her hand from the audience and says, "My skin is starting to repigment right now." And I was absolutely blown away and and unbelieving, I should say, unbelieving. But it was true. It was true. She came up and showed us. So I've seen everything from that to a an adult who never got along with her mother. We bring her back to, and in this case, it was a woman whose mother was 19 when she had her by accident and felt very trapped in the role and not being able to handle it very well. And the daughter always felt very unloved. And so we brought her back to that experience and essentially worked through this regaining her power, even as a baby, regaining her kind of equilibrium. And it totally changed the relationship between the mother and the daughter. It was, the mother was saying, it's like a miracle. We're suddenly communicating, because they had had a terrible relationship growing up. So this is the work that I'm doing now. And we tend to do these in retreats. We have a wonderful retreat coming up in September 5th through 9th. And you being British will appreciate this. We're holding it in a place called Broughton Hall, which was the runner-up as a location set for Downton Abbey. So it's this giant country estate with 3,000 acres, but the owners are very spiritually minded. So they've built a retreat center. There they have a spa, they have a fire pit, they have a labyrinth and a mini Stonehenge. So it's a giant spiritual place. And we went there and thought, this is perfect. This is really perfect to heal your past.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Just to let you know, Radhika is putting details in the chat, and we'll also have details of all the things that you're doing in the description. So it's
wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I find that is the most interesting. And we talked about traveling backward, and I just wanted to say there's a lot of evidence for getting out of time. I mean, quantum physicists don't believe in sequential time. We've been brought up to think of time as a forward-going arrow from cradle to grave, but no quantum physicists, I mean, the famous physicist Carlo Rovelli says essentially there is no such thing as time as we know it. And we also see from so many studies that quantum time is much more like one big smeared out now, that you can go back and change the past, but it's not changing the past. This is the weirdest thing of all. The studies I've seen about time displacement suggest that the future affects the present as it's unfolding. How about that? And there have been a number of studies demonstrating this. So that makes much more sense to me, that time is one big smeared out now. And that certainly, you see that with people who have suffered some sort of trauma or diminishment. It's like it's sitting right there on their shoulder as though it happened yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Wow. How do they prove that what happens in the future is actually happening now? How is that
Okay.
provable?
Okay, well, let me explain a study that's a little complex, but it was run by Dr. Dean Radin, who is the senior scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. He did a variation, a computerized version of a thing called a very well-known psychological test called the stroop test. And the stroop test, and this is the variation on it that I want to talk about, shows that when we have a shape, or a word. Let's start with a word. Let's say we have the word green. If it's painted purple, the letters are painted purple, it takes the brain longer to register that we're saying green. So if we say to someone, say the name of the word, say the word itself, not the color, it will take it longer because there's a difference in the brain's ability to register something, a word and a color and a shape. Now, take that as a shape. Let's say you have a red square and you have written under it purple triangle. Again, that will take the brain a lot longer because it's a real disconnect between what you're seeing and what the word is. So Dean took that idea, the one with the shapes, and he had a two-step process for people registering, is it the right color, is the color name the same as the color that's there in the shape, and is the shape the same as the shape itself. And he found with this two-step computerized process, get ready for this, the time it took to do the second task of it influenced the time it took to do the first one. So weird how he was able to measure that, but he is, he's a very meticulous scientist. And so that demonstrated this weird time displacement of the future affecting the present as it unfolds. And it's not weird if we move beyond sequential time. And as I say, there have been many, many studies, everything from being able to affect traffic after it's moved to affecting those random event generators that were used for so many years in Princeton University. By the way, that's just a PS. That's another reason why we wanted to choose Broughton Hall is it now houses, an outbuilding there houses all the original PAIR equipment. And scientists have worked on it. They should be workable by the time we do our retreat so that people can interact with them. Those original electronic tosses of the coin used for so many years to demonstrate that thoughts can affect a randomized equipment, so that if you have a computer showing random pictures, let's say of apples and oranges, if you focus on it and say, I want more apples, I want to see more apples than oranges in a significant number of cases, you get more apples than oranges. So that equipment's going to be there. But anyway,
Wow.
that also has been done, studies of time displacement. They've done so many experiments showing that you can affect this equipment after it's run. If you have nobody sending intention to it, it will show up afterward. It will have essentially a printout of 50%, about 50% apples, 50% oranges. If you let it run somewhere in a closet or something like that, and after the fact, you do an intention on this equipment, and you say, I want more apples and oranges, they'll look at the readout and say, oh my God, there's more apples and oranges here. So they've done thousands of those kinds of time displacement studies too, and showed they had an effect. They've also shown things like that with remote viewing. In Princeton University, they did so many studies of remote viewing where they would have a remote viewer sitting in the lab, and his traveler, the traveling partner, would be given a random envelope with a location on it, and he'd have to go there. And it could be anywhere from around the corner to 2,000 miles away. So the remote viewer, the traveler would have to go, and the remote viewer would have to draw and describe where his partner was without any communication between the two of them. He did not know what was in that envelope. Now, 2/3 of their studies were what they called precognitive, so that the remote viewer had to draw and describe where his partner was going before that partner had even taken the envelope, before he had gone to wherever it was. And they were extraordinary. They had, the majority were accurate to an incredible extent. I've seen them. I've seen remote viewers describing train stations where their partners would have gone once they picked the envelope up, or one had to go to Moscow and was at a museum, a galleria, and the partner drew something that was exactly like that galleria. So there are many, many instances of this total time displacement, demonstrating that we can also access the future, which is another thing I've been playing around with too, with intention and working with people on, is designing your future, but using a group to do it with you. And once again, using this power of time displacement to go forward.
So really, how much of our limitations do you consider are really due to our conditioning? You know, what we've, as you say, science that we've been working with is 300 years old. How can we open up more of these windows of unlimitedness, if you like?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it takes techniques and practice, and many indigenous cultures realize this. I mean, many of the indigenous cultures in the rainforest um, get together in the morning and share their dreams because they believe the dream is the greater reality and waking life is the falsehood. And so other cultures get this, and
Yeah.
it's for us to rediscover it. So there are many ways of bringing these things into your life. I mean, that's my work, is the work of using intention, but there are also ways to condition yourself to learn ESP. And that's another thing I do in some of my courses, is help people read other people's intentions. And that's not difficult to do because we have these innate qualities in us. We can pick up other information a bit imperfectly at first, but that's a trained skill. It's something we possess. The same thing as forecasting. I was fascinated to read of the work of Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, another good friend, who after 9/11 put out I think he put an ad in one of the local New York papers saying, did anyone have a dream about this before the planes went into the buildings? And he got back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of responses from people saying they'd had a very vivid dream either the night before or many days before, of planes going into buildings. Sometimes they were in the plane, sometimes other people were witnessing it. Sometimes they were buildings in New York, the actual Twin Towers. Other times they were just tall buildings in another city, or a mythical, tall building. So we pick these things up. We have the ability to forecast. We just have to learn how to listen. We learn how to do, how to create. And
Yeah.
so that is really that's the work I do now, is really try to help people discover this, particularly in small groups. The power of small groups really seems to supersize this.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What are some of the techniques? Could you share some of the techniques that make this so effective and powerful?
Sure. One big technique I have 13 keys to intention mastery, but I'll share one of the really important ones with you, which is the need to be specific. You know, most people aren't specific. They'll say something like, I want to be rich. And they don't really mean they want to be rich. They, in the sense of just accumulating a lot of stuff and having loads and loads of money. What they mean is, usually, I want to change my job. And I think being rich will just enable me to have freedom. Or I want more free time to be with my children or my grandchildren. Or I just want to pursue a hobby and I haven't been able to do that. Rather than I just want to accumulate a lot of money in the bank. So it's always important to tell the universe exactly what you want. And there's an urban myth around that you shouldn't be very specific because the universe won't be able to fill in the gaps. Well, believe me, the universe is a bit smarter than that and will indeed be able to fill in the gaps. But you can't necessarily get what you want unless you tell the universe what is it that you want. And that starts a whole cascade of other things in yourself too, I find, that that wills you toward that conclusion. I also find it's really important to make a public vow of this. And that's why a group works so well. Telling the group what you want. I had a woman who had chronic fatigue, wasn't getting better in any way, and had it for years. And so she made a public vow in her Power of Eight group to find the solution, whatever it took. And she did. And suddenly she came upon, and they did intentions for her to find the right practitioner, the right direction in order to heal her. And she did. And she's climbing mountains now. She does hiking, she's working out. This was somebody who couldn't walk the dog for 5 minutes. So
Wow.
there's, enormous power in being specific.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's really important to understand is intention is really different from meditation. Everybody thinks it's just an extension of meditation. And so did I until we did brainwave studies on Power of Eight groups. I was very fortunate to work with Life University, one of the largest and most prestigious chiropractic universities in the world. And we did a series of Power of Eight studies where we would get a group of student volunteers who'd never done any of this kind of thing before, including meditation. And we'd put an EEG cap on one of the senders and then measure what happened. And we assumed that the brainwave signature would be exactly like that of meditation. Well, to our amazement, it was the exact opposite. Meditation causes increases in certain brain waves, like alpha waves, slower brain waves, alpha and delta waves, the waves of light dreaming and meditation. Ours had a diminishment of all brain waves, particularly those parts of the brain, the parietal lobes, which sit back here and they help us navigate through space. They tell us, this is me, this is not me. They were dialed way down. And so were the parts of the brain, the right frontal lobes, that get involved in worry, doubt, and negativity. So these were brainwave signatures that were nothing like meditation. They were absolutely, virtually identical to brainwave studies done by the University of Pennsylvania, looking at Dr. Andrew Newberg, neuroscientist, looking at Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer, Sufi masters during chanting. They were virtually identical. So we quickly realized that these Power of Eight groups were transporting people very quickly because we were measuring within a minute of doing these things. And we only had people hold intentions for 10 minutes. That's it. We realized that they were going into a mystical state, a peak experience, as Abraham Maslow described them, an altered state of ecstatic oneness. And so that, I think, is the really important part of this too. It is very, very different from meditation. So you need to do certain techniques in order to essentially do it properly and not just meditative techniques.
Right, that leads me on to the next possibility. Is there something you would like to do with our community who are very eagerly online with us? Is there something specific you might like to do? All
Sure.
right. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
I do think they would like to intend for a swift resolution of Ukraine, the Ukraine situation.
All right, guys. Can you please comment anything? Is that what you'd like to intend? What would you like to intend? Let's get some feedback.
That sounds like a good idea.
You talk a lot about the power of community, the social connection, knowing that somebody's got your back makes such a
Absolutely.
difference, doesn't
Absolutely.
it?
That is such an important part of the power of eight is the idea that you aren't alone. I mean, in my book, The Bond, which was really looking at was Darwin right? Were we meant to be so competitive? The answer was a resounding no, because when you look at many, many elements of what make for a happy human being, belonging is central. It's just right up there with food and water and air. We need to belong, we need to connect, and we need to, we also need to give. It's really important. The whole piece of altruism isn't just a nice thing to do, it's an essential thing to do. We need to give to others. And when we do, people who do, no matter how small that giving is, whether they take out their neighbor's trash, for instance, you live healthier, happier, longer lives. So I think all of those are really important in the whole community piece. It's really essential. And it's probably the most important thing for our future now in these tumultuous times.
Very much so. And what I love is what I feel a big contribution you're making to humanity here, Lynne, is you're helping us to become more independent of the various systems that are no longer very supportive to our highest well-being, shall we say.
Oh, yes. I guess
Um,
I'm a little rabble rouser. I mean, of course, the one thing I've really been focusing on for many decades is the health system and conventional medicine. That's been a big piece of what we've done, my husband and I, in running a magazine, then first a newsletter, now a magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You. And we've been researching conventional and alternative medicine now for 32 years. And we've seen what works and what doesn't work. And in a sentence, the whole system of chronic illness is really needs a total revamp away from the drug culture, the medical model. Modern medicine is brilliant for emergency surgery or emergencies full stop. I mean, it's
yeah,
unparalleled. If you have an emergency, if I get run over by a bus in the next 20 minutes, I want the best of modern medicine to glue me back together again. But for anything else, yeah, we need the new medicines and the very old medicines, which have
yes,
healed chronic diseases for centuries. So, yeah, I'm very wedded to pushing forward the new medical model that is much more integrative and much more tolerant of different kinds of medicines and embraces them. And
yes,
also, after writing the field, I realized if we have this new science there, if we're not separate, and if all of these things I talked about earlier are the case, well, we have to rebuild our world. We have to live in a completely different way. And that's another part of my interest in the work that I do is to try to create tools for a new world.
yeah. And the work you're doing is phenomenal because I feel like almost like you're the Roger Bannister of intentions. Yeah, you're leading the way. And he ran the under 4 minute mile, and then 7 weeks later, something like 30 other people had done it. Or I can't remember the exact date, but so you're showing what is possible. You're you're opening up possibility, and the more people that can see and have evidence of these miracles, stage 4 cancer, or healing your finances, relationships, You are a pioneer, so brave in creating this new world. So,
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it looks like we need to all step up because, things aren't very good right now. Things are falling down. And I love talking to Lee Carroll some months back, who channels Cryon, the entity Cryon. And he kept saying that Cryon had said that all of this tumultuous um, collapse, let's put it that way, is happening right on schedule. And I liked that. I liked the idea that, yeah, we've come to a point where this is unsustainable, this model, this life. And we shouldn't fear it because we are going to replace it with a better model. But we have to, it's making us, forcing us to re-examine what's going on and to say, no, this isn't good enough. We need to do something better.
yeah. And there are so many possibilities. This is what I love. It's like, and it doesn't matter what you eat or what color you are or where you come from, you can still participate in this intention,
Mhm.
in these experiments, and
Absolutely.
still have the most amazing results. It's not limited to a certain elite.
No, and I mean, I should say too, my intention experiments are always free. Always free. I never charge for anything. I feel like it's really important that people participate. And one thing we haven't talked about, Bracha, is there is a weird mirror effect that happens. I have been surveying participants in intention experiments since 2008, the year after we started. And to my astonishment, I was just asking in the surveys, how was this for you? What happened to you? How was it afterward? Was it a nice experience? Did your computer work, etc.? And back came thousands and thousands of answers with essentially about 40% of people reporting some sort of physical improvement, some sort of healing improvement. But also they were reporting, because the first one we did was a peace intention experiment for Sri Lanka, where I sent back surveys. And um, thousands of people were saying, I've healed my relationship with my partner, or my son who stopped talking to me is now talking to me. He suddenly called me and is talking to me. And people, nearly half saying, I'm more in love with other people in the world, meaning particularly strangers. And that was really mind blowing to me. Not only were they getting along better with their spouses and their loved ones and their bosses, they were getting along and with everybody they came into contact with. And so I started realizing, wow, there's some interesting rebound effect in participating in this kind of a altruistic act, and
Yes.
that this perhaps changes people. So that's another reason for opening up the intention experiments for anybody, because they are healing to the individuals who take part as well.
Yeah, I love that mirror effect. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't have to be the receiver to be able to be benefiting. That's,
No, and that's true in small groups, Power of Eight groups too. We have many, many healings with the senders, and that's the beauty of it. When you're in a Power of Eight group and say taking turns sending intention to some member of the group, sometimes it's your turn, most of the time it isn't. It's altruism that powers it, really. Mostly you're doing for other people, and that is an extraordinary healer.
yeah, yeah. Wow. There's a million more questions I could actually ask you, Lynn, and I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind that there is a big interest in um, healing the situation in the Ukraine. So would you mind doing
Not at
something?
all. Let's all gather. And when you do this, just feel the energy that's going to be created by all of the people who are on this webcast and this
Okay,
live YouTube. So
wonderful.
I want you to get very comfortable and imagine we're all together in the same room. All of the people who are on this YouTube broadcast, all together in the same room. We're all holding hands. We're all taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And a deep breath in. And now, on the exhalation, I want you to hold the following intention. Our intention is that Ukraine experience an immediate, complete, and permanent ceasefire on both sides so that there are no more casualties on both sides, and Ukraine remains a sovereign, independent country with no more violence, with no more war. Let's hold that. And as you're holding it, please take it down to your hearts and imagine with all of your five senses, soldiers putting down their guns, the Russians retreating completely from Ukraine, people cheering in the streets, free of casualties, no more casualties, the flag flying high in Ukraine, and a worldwide celebration. So allow your mind to imagine the moment when Ukraine declares victory and independence again. And let's send that out and we'll hold it just for a minute. And as you do, feel the heavy energy, the big electric connection between us. Okay, in your own time, let go of the intention, trust the process, and in your own time, come back onto the broadcast. And if you'd like to, when you're present again, feel free to write in the chat about your experience. What happened to you? What did you see? What did you hear? And how do you feel too?
Thank you, Lynne. That was beautiful. Delia is imagining dancing and singing. Juliana says beautiful energy. Ed says goosebumps in his heart.
Wonderful.
Angela says released. Yes, beautiful. Juliana saw soldiers laying down their arms and hugging each other. People crying with relief and joy. Victory songs. Wow. people reaching out and hugging. Joanna feels 100% peaceful now.
Mm.
Amazing.
Yes.
And Marie says, beaming smiles, joy, celebrations.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yes, and do let us know if you felt the energy, and also how you feel now.
Yeah.
Now, usually I hold intentions for about 10 minutes. No more than that. No more than that, ever. That's really what we started with our first intention experiment. And because it worked, that's really been the way we've proceeded. And how I've proceeded is, well, what worked before and how do we build on that? And so I never ask people to intend for more than 10 minutes. I know meditation can go on for hours and hours, but we found you don't need any more than 10 minutes. It works in that time. It's and there's usually lots of priming and a lot of techniques too, and a lot of other types of modalities. You have to, take a real long time as a Sufi master to get into chanting and whirling dervishes. And here you don't. And what we found with our studies, even with these novices who hadn't even meditated before, that a Power of Eight group seemed to be a fast track to the miraculous, to a miraculous altered state. So you don't need any more than that.
But that's really wonderful. Yeah, we haven't got to go through years and years of
No,
preparation.
no, of priming and deprivation, because we think we have to suffer in order to develop a spiritual life. We have to suffer to improve and to learn. And that's been our ideas about spirituality. And you don't need a sweat lodge, you don't need to walk on glass or anything like that. What you need, I always say, is a group and a common intention. And that is your passport to essentially, it's a passport to that extraordinary oneness, that sense of oneness that I hope everyone experienced for just a minute. It gets
Yes.
very much deeper over 10 minutes and over time and practice.
Yeah. Oh, so many people are commenting here, feeling so much calmer, more relaxed, and Jack saying we don't have to suffer to learn.
No, we don't have to suffer to learn. As I say, all we need is a group and a common intention. And
Amazing.
what it does, and here's the big key piece.
Yes.
Many times when people are stuck, I just turn them to them and I say, well, get off of yourself. Because, we also think with the self-help movement, I think that's rather a dangerous name because it is so much obsessive focus on the self. And what I found to be an amazing quick healer is other focus and other intention. That heals the healer. It really does. And it's not just feel good, just feel good. I mean, I've seen so many people. There was a Vietnam vet who was in deep depression, who had been traumatized by the war all those years ago, and his life just went down in a terrible spiral. And he was to the point when I met him, which was I think he's about 65, where he didn't even want to get out of bed. And he participated in one Power of Eight group where he was a sender to a woman with cancer. And he woke up the next day like Scrooge on Christmas, just Mr. Personality, Mr. Loving personality, going around saying hi to everyone he'd studiously avoided before. And that next day, he actually had a vision, a dream that was a vision of meeting his younger self, who had to drop out of college to drop out of university to go to fight in this war and had been traumatized. And that was the beginning of all of this tough life. And the 19-year-old self said to him in this dream, there's still time. There's still time. And he became a different person. He started exercising again. He had started studying again. He started writing again. He started becoming very involved in his church. And he was completely healed in these 10 minutes. So I've seen that so many times where a sender can also be healed.
Yes, yes. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are certain viewers who are listening today who were sending energy for, intention for Ukraine, and something magical may happen in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
It's all connected, isn't it? It's
It is. It is that power of, that altruism that when I studied Power of Eight groups, and I spent a long time looking at all the different elements of them, it's intention, and all that quantum stuff we talked about. It's the group effect. Emile Durkheim, the famous French psychologist, called it collective effervescence when a group comes together.
nice.
It's that altruism piece, that getting off of yourself can be healing for the person themselves, the sender. But there's also a little X factor, that it's magic. And, as I mentioned before, I was a very big doubting Thomas, and I've seen miracles and had to recognize that. I always used to say about intentions for when we were doing them with peace intention experiments. Did we do this? In short answer, who knows? If you're talking about sending intention to lower violence somewhere, there's many, many, many factors in there that could have been at play. The only thing is we've done about 10 peace intention experiments, and they've all demonstrated some sort of positive response. So it starts getting interesting. But the point is now, and I guess where I am is, did we do this? Are we responsible all the time? And part of me says, and why did it work? And part of me says, I don't know, and who cares? It works. It works, it's healing. And, there is that little element that we can't explain. Not yet, anyway.
Wow, I love that. Not yet, because as you say, it's an ongoing story.
It's an ongoing story, and it's one that I continue to follow.
Is evolving, and also I don't know how you are on time today. As I said, I could ask you a million questions, but maybe
Sure.
just one last question, if I may, here.
Sure.
Promise. So this would open up a myriad of possibilities with our bodily health, our ability to live with disease free, our ability to live, well, if we're not living in time, then maybe there's no counting of the years. Does it not open up, as more of us open up to more miracles here, does that then take us as a human race beyond anything we could even imagine, maybe at this point?
Oh, absolutely. Remember, too, we're on this brink of this scientific revolution,
Yeah.
and more people are subscribing to this, whereas they see the old way of doing things is not sustaining us anymore, is not sustaining the planet. So we suddenly recognize the power of community, the power we hold inside ourselves to create our lives as we wish it to be, to connect with others, and how healing that is for both sides.
Yes.
How using intention, I mean, one thing I teach people is how to get along with anybody using intention, even people you can't stand, even people who disagree with everything you believe. There are ways to do things that make that connection no matter what. And these are, I believe, these can be tools for creating a new way of being, and we certainly need to. And that was certainly the conclusion I came to after I wrote that first book, The Field, was we need to live in a very different way. We need to build from scorched ground, and it's pretty scorched at the moment. So it's an ideal time to get out your hammer and nails.
Thank you so much, Lynn. It's just been a tremendous pleasure having you today. Thank you for your time, your energy, your passion. And yeah, thank you. Wishing you every success. And I hope that we can meet again at some point.
That'd be great, Bracha. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you.
Take care. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Radhika. You did a great job. Thank you. Thank you.